Hi there everybody, welcome to another video. On today's video I have this Mazda MPV. This is a 2007 vehicle, the 7-seater, and it's got this petrol engine. I don't remember the capacity at the minute, but we'll find out and I'll put it on the title of the video. Now this particular one is an import, which is why I got the manual here, but it's all in Japanese. But I just wanted to work out which type of engine I have, and looking at the drawings here, I have used Google Translator as well to help me a bit. But this is the engine that I have, the L3VE. You can see the drawing and you can see where the dipstick is and the oil fill cap at the back. If you have the L3VDT, then it's this one here. Having established which engine we have, we can then check the oil capacity. And since I have the L3VE, it states if you do just an oil change, it's 4 liters. If you do an oil change including changing the oil filter, it's 4.4 liters. Now I have an oil filter for this car, but I'm not sure it's the correct one, so I may just have to do an oil change, but I will show you where the filter is and how to change it if need be. However, if I do have the correct filter, then we're gonna go ahead and change it. But there's nothing I can do today. I can't really get a filter today. I need to finish this car. It hasn't really done that many miles since its last service, probably something like 2,000 miles, so it wouldn't be the end of the world not changing the filter. So having said that, we'll have a look and I'll show you anyway. So as we established, 4.4 with an oil filter change. The other engine, the L3VDT, it's a 5.3 without the filter, 5.7 with the filter. So now we know, and also here they give you a guide of what type of oil you can use. I'm gonna use 5W30. It covers a good range of temperatures as shown in here. If you're in a hot country, very hot, you may want to use the slightly thicker oil, and if you're in a very cold country, the 0W20 is recommended there, which goes up to temperatures of -35. So if you're in the North Pole, you could potentially use that instead. So now that's the Mazda MPV there, and we can start by pulling the dipstick here and opening the oil filler cap back here. Okay, now just gonna get that off, and I'm going to leave that off. So mainly the reason I'm opening those is to allow some air into the system while we drain the oil from underneath. If you need to top up, since I'm doing a service, I also just topped up the screen wash fluid, which goes here. So this is windscreen fluid for your windscreen, to wash the windscreen. This is essential in winter, especially now we're going into winter here in the UK, and it's good idea to use the proper one, because if you use just water and the conditions get to minus or freezing, then that is going to freeze. So just use some proper stuff. It's cheap enough. You can buy the concentrated or ready mixed, and obviously if you buy the ready mix, just pour it in there. I just topped up about 3 liters in there, or 2.5 liters. Right, so I'm gonna get the car up. We're gonna tackle the filter and the drain plug from underneath. Okay, so looking at the car from underneath, we have the oil sump right here and our oil filter is here, and it actually looks like I have the correct oil filter, so we can go ahead and change it. Now we can drain the oil filter from this little screw here, which it's like a 6mm Allen. Now I tried to open that with my 6mm Allen and it didn't, it just went round. So I had to put this other type of tool in it, able to loosen that, and that shouldn't really be that tight, but I'm not sure why it was. So anyway, I had to sort of force one of my other tools into there a little bit, and I was able to open this, so we can drain the oil from there. But before I do that, I'm going to drain the oil from this bolt here, the sump plug bolt, and I've got a 17mm socket for that. So we can just crack that open. Hopefully it shouldn't be too tight. And remember, if the engine's been running and it's very hot, that oil can also be very hot. So just remember that. So be careful and don't burn yourself. You could always wait a little bit for it to cool down. So make sure you do have an oil pan, obviously, to catch the oil. And once this is drained a bit, I can move my oil pan a little bit more to the left, so I can drain that. And you're also going to need a tool to remove this filter casing here, and the tool I'm going to be using for that is this one here. And the size of that is, if we can maybe see that, sometimes it's written, it's a 76 by 14. So 76 or 14, 76/14. Right, I'm gonna wait for that to drain a bit. Okay, now it's dripping. That's dripping a little bit. It's just going onto the pan there. I moved my pan just to sit under this, and so I can now undo these and hopefully drain some of that oil into the oil pan. So that's just gonna empty our oil filter housing a little bit, and we can avoid having a big mess if you remove it without removing that, basically. So again, I'm just gonna let that drip, and then we're gonna put it back. I'm gonna check if we have a new O-ring for that, and then put it back, and then we can open the big one. Okay, so my kit does have the O-rings, the necessary O-rings, 2 of them. That's the little one for there, which I've already taken out, the old one. And also I am changing the copper washer here. So that's the old one, and I got a new one on there. The size of that copper washer is this 14 by 20 by 1.5 millimeters. So I just bought a packet full of them, obviously, because I do cars most of the time. And this particular washer actually usually fits Mercedes, so that's why I have a bunch, because I normally do Mercedes cars. And so now it's just a matter of fitting that little O-ring in there, and until I do that, hopefully this would have finished dripping. And also, so in the end, the filter I'm using is this Blueprint filter ADM 52114. So that's the one for the engine that I've got here. But be sure to check with your supplier the correct oil filter, because some of these have a metal filter, and it could depend on the year, or if it's the other engine type, anything like that. It could depend. You may have slightly different filter, so don't just go by my part number, because it might be wrong for your car. Having said that, I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then we are ready to fit our bits back. Okay, that's finished dripping. Now I have my little screw there with a new little O-ring, and we can put it in there. And you almost only need to close that by hand really, but we'll do give it a little snag there, but don't overdo it because obviously there's no need. Okay, that is done. So now we can actually open the whole thing. Okay, now we can open this filter, and I've already opened it a little bit in order to be able to hold my phone and sort of show you how to open. These filters are usually tightened to something like 25 Newton meters, so they're not tight at all. Just be aware of that when you fit it back. So there we are. There's a bit more oil in there. And that oil is really black, to be honest. I think it was a good idea that we're changing this filter, because although the car hasn't done many miles since its last service, it clearly needed an oil and a filter change. Right, so I'm just gonna let that drain a little bit, and then that filter just pulls out of there. Okay, so we can get this filter out. And we can clean this a little bit. I do have some fluid, some brake cleaner. This fluid that I use for usually rinsing oil and whatnot. So it's really good for cleaning. So obviously just go ahead and give it a bit of a clean. And then we can fit our new parts. Also remove the O-ring that's sitting right there. You can just about see it. So this O-ring I'm going to remove and put the new one. If I can get it, well, I'll get it with my two hands, but you can see the O-ring just there. And so make sure you check where the O-ring is coming from. Sometimes the grooves can make it a bit confusing where the new one goes back in, but it's usually the larger groove. So just to show you there, the larger groove, you can't really go wrong with that, can you? It's obvious where the new O-ring is going to sit. So I'm not even left-handed, so that's even worse, trying to do it with my left hand. Okay, so that O-ring, new O-ring goes into that groove. Okay, now we can put our new filter in there, which should go into that hole basically. Sometimes these paper ones are, this little bit here is a little bit hard to push in, but that should be fine. Okay, that is ready. So now we are ready to fit that back in there, and just go ahead and fit it in there, and also screw it in by hand just to make sure it's going in the correct way. There we are. Now we can use the socket. That's still dripping a bit. So I'm not using a torque wrench, but I normally, obviously, I'm changing these almost every day and kind of have a feel for it. But if you are new and you don't want to damage anything, I would recommend using a torque wrench to tighten your filter housing and even your sump plug bolt, and that way you know you've tightened them to the correct setting, and also you don't damage anything. So I think it might be written in there, the tightening force. Just can't see it right now. Okay, so now I'm gonna put my sump plug bolt as well. Okay, here's my sump plug bolt with a new copper washer. We get that in there by hand as well, all the way in. You know it's going in the correct way, not gonna damage anything. And then if you have a torque wrench, these normally tighten to what, 25-30 Newton meters. So make sure you don't overdo it, because you don't want to damage the thread on the sump or even on the bolt. Obviously, if you damage the bolt, it's fair enough, but if you damage the sump, then you have another 100 hours of work. So when you close that all the way in by hand, just give it an extra bit of force with this, and you should be all right. Those copper washers are usually very good at creating a seal. If you do have a leak afterwards, something, if it looks like this, then you may have a damage there. But it may not have been caused by you, but it may have been caused by someone else. But this is why when we do the change, I always clean the area, because I like to leave it all clean and make sure it was clean, as clean as before. And I use this brake cleaner fluid to do so. That way, next time I check this, if there is any drips of oil, I can tell that either it's coming from the sump plug bolt or it's coming from here, and it's not, then we're not confused that oil might be coming from somewhere else. So if everything is nice and clean, if you do have a leak next time, then at least you can sort of figure out a little bit better where it might be from. Anyway, we're done here. I'm going to lower the car and then we can put some oil. Right, time to put some oil. Right, 4.4 liters. Right, got my 4.4 liters in there. Engine oil. Now we can close this. And check the dipstick. So if you look at your dipstick, usually the minimum end is here and the maximum end is here. So if I just check my oil now, it might be a little bit over the max, because once we run the engine, some of that oil is going to go into the oil filter housing. So it is difficult to see, but maybe you can just about see that it is over the shiny, all that shine, it's the oil. So that's about right. Once we run the engine, the oil, and you check this again, it will go down a bit. So I'm happy with that. That is closed. Got 4.4, and as I said, that's the one I used. ACEA A5 B5 for petrol engines, 5W30. But you can get obviously get advice from your supplier which engine oil to use. Okay, so let's get this car started and we'll just make sure everything's okay. So oil pressure light is off, engine sounds good, No warning lamps coming on here. And everything is okay here, so you can have a quick look underneath, make sure there's no oil dripping or anything like that. Obviously, anything obvious will be obvious. But having said that, I hope the video helps. Don't forget to like and subscribe. But do remember that this is just a guide, and you do whatever you do or you don't do is at your own risk. Also, whatever you do to yourself, it's at your own risk. So it's worth doing things with patience and with time, and that way you don't damage anything and or you don't injure yourself. So always be aware of using gloves, maybe using glasses. Sometimes oil jumps onto your eyes, things like that. And obviously if the oil is hot as well, don't burn your hands. Just health and safety is a priority for me, especially because I have lots of health problems related to other things. So I'm always very careful when it comes to not causing any other injuries to myself that I don't need. So it's just a reminder here. But anything you do or you don't do to your car or yourself, it's at your own risk. This is just a guide. Anyway, we'll see you on the next video. So thank you all for watching.